How long does it take for an electric car to charge? Now, those of you who are just looking into buying electric cars, this will definitely be a very useful video. But if you already have an electric car, you might stick around anyway, because a lot of electric car owners still don't know as much as they should about charging. For example, Tesla owners, a lot of them still believe that the fastest chargers are the Tesla superchargers charging their cars. That's not true. So if you thought that, maybe you should stick around. But I have a perfect person to talk about it today, because Tom Moloughney is joining us for his weekly segment, Plugged In with Tom Moloughney. And Tom, while everyone's been hoarding toilet paper and hand sanitizer, Tom has been hoarding the indoor chargers. This is literally his home, and this is not even the end of it. So over the years, as he's been testing them and working with them, he really is pretty much the best expert I know, if not the best expert out there on charging, and not just in home. So he's going to be here to explain to all of us, really. And every time Tom is here, I learn something new. So told all of us about 3 different levels of charging. And by the way, Tom is here every week, so don't forget to subscribe to this channel, just at least for that very reason. And of course, hit the bell notification icon so you don't miss anything moving forward. And of course, before I bring in Tom, quick reminder that this video and this channel is sponsored by Byton. Check out the all-electric SUV called M-Byte coming to the US and Europe. Absolutely no money down to get your reservation, so go to the description of this video to reserve your Byton today. And Evanex, the aftermarket accessories for Tesla. Use E4 Electric, the name of this channel, as a discount code for all purchases over $100. All right, without further ado, let me bring in Tom. And Tom, how are you doing? And can you tell us everything about electric car charging?
Well, we need a little bit longer than our segment to do that, but I'm doing fine, safe here in New Jersey. My wife and I are like, barricaded in our house now, and trying to limit our contact, being good citizens.
We should probably mention that we're taping this during the coronavirus lockdown, even though people might be watching this video a year later when they completely forgot about it. And it's back to Jay-Z and Trump tweeting and all of that stuff. So we're in a bit of a, a pickle here right now.
Well, I hope we've forgotten about it in a year from now. Let's just go on the premise that that'll be the case.
Let's hope so.
So yeah, there's a lot to discuss with electric car charging. A lot of people want to know, how long does it take to charge an electric car? And that's a question that's constantly been kind of evolving. Back when I first started driving electric, about 11 years ago, it was many hours to charge your electric car. There weren't very high-speed charging. There was very little public infrastructure. Most of the early electric cars would charge either on 110 outlet or at a 240-volt outlet at your home. But that's changed. And we now have kind of evolved into a 3-tier charging system. We have a picture of a basic 120-volt level 1 charger up on the screen now. That was the unit that was provided with my BMW i3. Most electric cars come with an EVSE that's called Electric Vehicle Supply or Service Equipment. Most of them will come with a 120-volt unit like that. Some of the newer electric cars now have been coming with better equipment, a 240-volt EVSE or charger, which is what Tesla has always supplied with their cars. But some of the other manufacturers now are kind of catching up and saying, hey, that slow level 1 charger isn't good enough. So we need to provide our customers with something a little better. So let's go over as I said, the levels of charging. We'll start out with level 1. Level 1 charging is regular household 120-volt outlet here in the US. A little bit different in Europe because they have standard 230-volt household current. So the cars are going to charge a little bit quicker. But for the purpose of this video, we're really going to be talking about North America and the electric supply that we have here. So a regular household outlet is a 120-volt outlet. you can charge your electric car on that outlet. You could just plug it in at home and charge it with the proper 120 volt EVSE, but it's going to take a while because it only charges at about 3 to 5 miles of charge per hour. It delivers about 1 kilowatt of electricity per hour. So that's okay if you have a plug-in hybrid with a smaller battery, or perhaps if you don't drive a lot and you don't need to replenish a lot of your battery every day. Now, before the people that charge exclusively on 120 volts jump down our throat, yes, some people live with that just fine, and it's enough charging for them. But the vast majority of people, when they get an electric car, are going to want a 240 volt charging source. And then you're jumping up to level 2 charging if you're using 240 volts. Now, those are, we have up on the screen there, 3 of the smaller portable 240 volt EVSE or chargers that you can buy today. They're lightweight, they're portable, and they're lower powered than some of the bigger units that you would see hanging on the wall that Alex showed you earlier, hanging on my garage. Some of those units are higher powered. Now they're all level 2 units because they accept 240 volts. But for instance, those smaller units that we had pictured before, they'll deliver like 16 amps of electricity, and that'll give you 3.5 kilowatts of power. The higher powered units that you see hanging on the wall, like the Tesla wall connector, for instance, they'll deliver anywhere from, say, 24 amps up to 48 amps of power. So they'll deliver somewhere between 15 to 20 miles of range per hour up to 45 miles of range per hour. And that's a significant difference and a significant upgrade from the 4 to 5 miles of range per hour that you can get on level 1. So for that reason, many people would prefer to install a 240 volt charging equipment in their garage or at their home. Now, if the concern is, can I install it? You should be able to. You don't need any kind of special electric for your house. It's basically the same as a circuit for an electric clothes dryer or an electric range. You basically put 2 120 volt circuits together to get 240 volts. But could have a problem if you have an older home that has a smaller service, like maybe a 100 amp main for the house.
That's exactly what I had. I had to upgrade mine to 200 from 100. It's very common, at least here in California.
Yeah, that's regionally specific. You know, there are some areas that are better than others in certain ages of the home. So if you know, the best thing we always like to tell people is, if you're going to consider getting an electric car and you're not really sure, have an electrician come to your house and ask him, hey, can I add a 240 volt circuit here? Can I add a dedicated 40 amp or 60 amp 240 volt circuit without having to upgrade my service? That way you have an idea of whether or not you're going to be able to do this for a few $100s or a few $1,000s if you need to install a whole new upgraded service. So it's a good idea to understand where you're at before you make that electric car purchase. I've heard stories of people that have went out and bought an electric car and they get it home and they really didn't research the charging, and now they're in for $3,000 or $4,000 to upgrade their service. They weren't budgeted for that. So be ready and actually have an electrician come out and take a look at your service before you make the plunge and get the EV. More than likely, you won't have to upgrade your service, but as Alex had to and many other people have to, it is a possibility.
Yeah, and I actually, the reason I had to was because I also had, at that time I had 2, and also like my Volt doesn't take that much amperage, but like my Tesla that when I had it took a lot, right? Especially some had onboard double charger, so that took a lot of energy. You can go up to 80 amps with those, so that's pretty much your entire house.
Yeah, it could be as much power as the whole house has the capability of
Right.
supplying.
Right.
But let me say one thing. people sometimes get a little too wound up in how much power they have to deliver to their car. You had a Tesla that could draw, you had the dual onboard chargers, so it could accept up to 80 amps. It didn't mean you had to give it 80
I did
amps.
not.
It would have charged just fine if you would have installed a 30 amp or a 40 amp charger. You would have still been fully charged every morning when you leave your house. And that's really the goal. With home
Let's
charging, you want to make sure that you can charge quick enough so that even if your battery is depleted one night and you plug it in, by the next morning when you're leaving for work or to do whatever you do, your car's fully charged. So just because your car can accept 80 amps, Alex, doesn't mean you have to go out and buy this 80 amp charger and put in a new service.
yeah.
Some people get a little tied up with that, and they, especially new EV purchasers, because they're so concerned that they're not going to be fully charged, that they go out and make sure they get the highest power possible. And it's not always necessary, to be honest with you.
Right. Well, in my case, actually, it didn't really matter whether I upgraded to a 32 amp or 80 amp. I just needed a new panel anyway, and that cost me, and I got a great deal of $30,000. Though, of course, if you own a house and you only had a 100 amp panel, you're probably going to end up upgrading it sooner or later anyway.
Yeah.
So now we should probably pause here and talk about people who live in apartment complexes, because in most states, or at least in a lot of states, your landlord, I believe, like if it's more than a 6-unit building, your landlord cannot prohibit you from getting a charging station as long as you pay for it. Let's talk a little bit about that and how expensive would that be, sometimes more, sometimes less, obviously.
You have it flip-flopped. I think you said in most states, the landlord cannot prohibit you. It's actually the opposite. In most areas, they can prohibit you. Different states and different municipalities now are making these laws that are kind of these right to charge laws, where if you live in the apartment and you want to install charging equipment, you have the right to, as long as you pay the full expense. That isn't the case in most states now. In most areas, the landlord or the condo association, they have the final say.
Wow,
And
I stand corrected. That's why I have you here to make sure that we get that. I was under the impression that these laws are kind of like taking over the country, but I guess we made a step backwards.
They're starting to gain traction in more areas. I've been fighting for what we call right to charge laws here in New Jersey for 7 or 8 years now, and it's definitely starting to take a hold. And some of the local politicians are putting it up for votes. So we're definitely getting some traction with that, but we're still a long way from that. As it is now, if you live in a condo, for instance, you have to get permission from the condo association. If you live in an apartment complex, you've got to talk to the owner and see if they'll let you install the charger. They can always say, no, I don't want it. It's a safety hazard. People might trip on the cord. I'm going to have to get more insurance. These are all the things that we've heard. A lot of them, I think, are not really sensical arguments, but nonetheless, in many cases, people just don't want to deal with anything extra if they own and manage property. So their answer is just no, without even really thinking about it.
Yeah.
So if you live in an apartment or a condo, it could be a little bit more difficult to get charging. That's another thing that you need to investigate before you go out and get the car.
Now, let me ask you, what if somebody lives in a place where there is a garage, so like an actual garage, so someone's renting a house or a duplex or whatever, and there is a washer and dryer, so a dryer, electric outlet, 240 outlet. Can you plug an electric car into that same outlet that your dryer goes to?
Yes, you would be able to, as long as you can get a cable that's long enough, because one of the problems with sometimes electric dryers or ranges is they're not located in convenient places where you can get your car close to it. But there are some in garages and some located right near the exterior of the house, and you can definitely charge from one of those circuits, provided you get the charging equipment that matches the circuit, the supply circuit, because there's there's 30 amp circuits, there's 40 amp circuits, there's 50 amp circuits. You need to make sure you match your equipment with your supply, and that's where an electrician can help you decide what you can install and what you can buy.
All right, well, I think we've covered everything for the level 2 now, so let's go to the top level.
Okay, so the fastest charging is DC fast charge. A lot of people refer to it as level 3, and that makes sense because we have level 1, we have level 2, so what would be faster than that? Must be level 3. But it actually really is called DC fast charge, and DC is direct current. Level 1 and level 2 that you have in your house is AC. It's alternating current. It's a different type of electricity. So with the DC fast charge, there's no need to have an inverter in your car. The electricity goes straight into the battery, so we can charge at a higher rate. What happens when you charge at home on level 1 and level 2 is you get your electricity is AC. It goes into the car through your inverter. It gets converted to DC where it goes into the battery, and that's kind of like a bottleneck. So with DC fast charge, it's DC going right into a DC battery. It doesn't have to go through charging equipment in the vehicle, so we can come in at a much higher rate and charge your vehicle a lot quicker. So these DC fast chargers, you wouldn't install one of those in your home. You wouldn't really have the capability to, and if you did, it would be really expensive. It would probably cost more than your electric car to actually put one in. So what you see, these are along major corridors, along highways, shopping centers, places where it's kind of like an attraction, a shopping mall. And more of them are popping up. Only a few years ago, there were almost no DC fast chargers in the country, and it made long distance travel in an electric vehicle very, very difficult, if not nearly impossible 10 years ago. But Tesla really came out of the box strong and started installing what they call their supercharger network, and that's just for Tesla cars. But for all the other makes, they needed DC fast chargers also. The only problem is none of the manufacturers are willing to really do what Tesla did and invest maybe hundreds of millions of dollars and put in this network. So the other manufacturers all kind of waited for third parties to do it, these charging infrastructure companies. Luckily, although it did take time, we're starting to get a tremendous amount of traction in that area. And we've got companies like Electrify America, EVgo, ChargePoint, are starting to really accelerate DC fast charge adoption. Electrify America alone, they started installing their DC fast chargers in the US about 21, 22 months ago. They didn't have one in the ground. Now they have over 2,000 in a little over less than 2 years. So, you think about that rate, 100 a month, and it's not slowing down. You've got EVgo has even, I think, slightly more in the ground than Electrify America has at this time. So what we're seeing now is kind of like an arms race with DC fast chargers, and everybody wants to be the biggest and the best. So that's good for the consumer because there's a lot of competition.
And we should mention
what isn't good for the consumer, unlike Tesla superchargers, is that all these different networks have all different pricing structures. And it's very difficult to understand how much your car is going to cost to charge because unlike gasoline, you might go to a gas station and pay $3 a gallon here, and down the road it's $3.10 or $3.20. It's kind of the same. With electric vehicle DC fast charging, it's not the same at all. You can charge on one DC fast charger and it'll cost you like $10, and you can go to another one 10 miles away and it costs $40. It's that much of a difference. So it's still kind of like the Wild West with electric vehicle charging rates. All these different networks have all different pricing. Then you have ChargePoint, who doesn't set the pricing. They just sell the equipment, and whoever buys it, they decide to set their own pricing. So ChargePoint public charging pricing is the greatest variation. There's plenty of stations that are actually free, and then there's stations that cost a crazy amount of money. So, right now, the best thing you can do to really understand how much it's going to cost you on a DC fast charger is use a good app like PlugShare, and it tells you the rates. So you can kind of just pull out the app, see where you're going to charge, and you'll see what it's going to cost you. Tesla has consistent rates. It tells you on their app. Many of the Tesla owners have free charging. If they get referrals, they get free supercharging miles. So it's a much smaller problem. And Tesla really basically just charges what the electricity costs in the area. So you're almost paying as little as you would if you were charging at home, which is actually really great for their customers. That's as far as what it costs. Now, how about the charging rates? Because we were talking about how long does it take to charge your electric car. We talked about level 1. It charges at about 3 to 5 miles per hour of charging. Level 2 will charge at somewhere between 15 and 45 miles per hour of charging. With DC fast, it's almost like per minute because you can charge up to 1,200 miles an hour on a DC fast charger. And since no electric car can actually go 1,200 miles per charge, you wouldn't need to charge for an hour. For a long time, Tesla superchargers were the fastest chargers around. They charged at 120 kilowatts. And that was when no other DC fast charger could charge more than 50 kilowatts. But now in the last couple years, we're starting to get these ultra fast DC fast chargers come out. And they were charging at 150 kilowatts. Now Electrify America and some other companies have 350 kilowatt DC fast chargers. So they're upping the bar. Here we go with the DC fast arms race. But not everybody can accept that kind of charge rate. Just because you're at a 350 kilowatt DC fast charger doesn't mean your electric car can charge at 350 kilowatts. The car limits what it can accept. So take, for instance, a BMW i3 or a Nissan Leaf, you're stuck at 50 kilowatts. So no matter what DC fast charger you charge on, you can't accept more than 50 kilowatts. Then there's cars like the Jaguar I-Pace that can do about 100 kilowatts. You've got the Audi e-tron that can do 150 kilowatts. And now you've got the big bad Porsche Taycan who is the king, I guess, of DC fast charge right now, and it can accept 270 kilowatts.
And what's the top Tesla? What's the top rate for Tesla right now with the Model 3?
So the Model 3 can accept up to, I think, 250 or 270 kilowatts. They're new superchargers that they're really just starting to install. There's only a few in the ground yet. They can deliver 250 kilowatts. Now, if you have a Model S or a Model X, you still can't charge at that rate. The new Model S Raven will be able to, but the Model S's that are out today, I think they're capped at 120 or 150 because their battery cells are different than what's in the Model 3. Model 3 batteries are a little bit different, and they can accept a higher charge rate. But still, to date, there aren't a lot of the 250 kilowatt V3 superchargers. I haven't come across one yet when I'm driving my Model 3, but they are coming. And then Tesla's going to be right up there with Porsche for the fastest charging electric vehicle out there. So we're talking about rate on a DC fast charger. It depends on what your car can accept. But typically, most electric cars can charge to about 80% in a half an hour or less. So if you need to stop at a DC fast charger, you're probably only going to be there for somewhere between 20 minutes and 45 minutes, depending on how much you need to charge.
And depending if there is a line, because sometimes that happens during holidays and really busy locations. Now, let me just clarify a couple of things. I just want to make sure everything's super clear that Tesla has its network of superchargers specifically just for Tesla cars here in North America. It's different in Europe, where they usually actually a more common standard of CCS. Now, the other networks that you talked about, Electrify America, EVgo, and so forth, they can charge you either at CCS or CHAdeMO. Still old school, but there are some cars out there still need CHAdeMO, and it is the Electrify America that has the fastest possible charge rate at 350 kilowatts, though there's no cars out there who can actually take that. Just wanted to kind of clarify that and make sure that I got that right.
So there are some other companies that are coming out with 350 kilowatt DC fast chargers besides Electrify America. So they're not going to be the only ones that have the ultra high charge rates. So that's changing quickly. Now, as we also to remind everyone, only Tesla cars can use Tesla superchargers, but Tesla cars can use the chargers from the other networks if it has a CHAdeMO plug, because Tesla sells an adapter that costs, I think, about $400, and you can plug your Tesla into an Electrify America or EVgo station or charge point station, as long as you have this CHAdeMO adapter. You are then limited to 50 kilowatts. So your Tesla's going to charge a lot slower than what it would on a Tesla supercharger. But if you need to charge and there's no superchargers in the area, it's worth having that car if you do a lot of crazy road trips and you want to be able to charge anywhere that you can. It's not a bad idea to have the Tesla CHAdeMO adapter.
And in Europe, Teslas can charge at pretty much all other fast charging networks, because they do have a CCS plug, which I wish we kind of convert everything here, but it's too late for that.
Yeah, and they have in Europe, they have a Tesla to CCS adapter. So if your car has a Tesla plug and you want to use CCS, you can use the adapter. Now, CCS Europe is called CCS2. It's different than the CCS in the US. We have CCS1. So the plug is slightly different. So in the US and Canada, there is no Tesla CCS adapter. That's only for Europe. And as you mentioned, the new Model 3s now are actually shipping with a CCS plug built into the car inlet. They're not using their proprietary Tesla inlet.
Yeah. All right. Well, listen, this is pretty much the overall information that everybody needs to, at the very least, educate themselves before they buy an electric car, to see which one is for them and if they're even ready to buy one. So I appreciate the information. I know we'll be covering this topic over and over again. The technology moves pretty quickly. So thanks for hanging out with me, and I will see you next week.
Thanks, Alex. Be well.
All right. Well, so I know it's kind of a lot of information, I know, but this is very important, especially before you're buying a car. Whether you already have an electric car or you don't have it, doesn't really matter. Whatever your next car is going to be, you might want to make sure that you kind of match what you can do for the car and what the car can do for you. And of course, you want to talk about whether or not you need the long distance fast charging or you don't do it very often, and then your needs are just not. And a lot of times people just have one car to drive around in the city. I just made a video for where you can get cars for under $10,000 that are used that only have 50, 60, 70 mile range, and then you have another car, whether electric or gas, that you actually use for long distance trips. So let us know in the comment section if you guys have any comments. Me and Tom will be happy to answer that and maybe make another video based on what you guys are asking. But also, of course, don't forget to follow Tom on social media, including Twitter. That's where it gets really interesting. But also there is a link in the description of this video to all of his articles on InsideEVs. All right, we are looking forward to your comments. Other than that, see you guys next time. And remember to stay charged.